Welcome to Environment and Habitat. You're in one, and hopefully by the end of this workshop, you'll have more understanding about the concepts behind those words. Now, the other thing is that next time I do this workshop, I'm going to throw ecosystems in there also, because this is actually a lot about ecosystems. So, some of my tune up. Hey, Sarah. See you there. Thanks for joining us. And thanks to everybody that's, watching on Facebook. I had my weekly editor meeting, and it just really, at the end of that meeting, it really kind of flowed into this one. It was 2 hours ago, but we were talking about challenge, and we were talking about that was a chapter in the book. We were talking about challenge, and we were talking about growing a healthy mental habitat. And that's something that, I say in a while, we'll grow a healthy mental habitat. Well, what is habitat and environment? So this workshop, understanding habitat, environment, ecosystems, what are those things? Again, we're in a natural environment. We're in an environment. We're in habitat. We have our inner environments, which is going to be the big focus here. And of course, you've got our inner, and I like to say physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. The mental, emotional part is I think the easy part of the next step. Physical environment, well, that's science. That's basic. That's medicine. That's contemporary medicine, is understanding our inner environment, our inner habitat ecosystems. What's the difference between environment, habitat? And I'm going to start putting some ecosystems in there also, just for basic foundational things. And if you look it up, you'll see a lot of people have a lot of different and slightly different variations on the difference between habitat and ecosystem and environment. The main thing, I think, that is the environment is a bigger picture, and then the habitat is the smaller picture within that. So, and there's many different layers of all of those things. So the environment, and if we talk about climate, water, rainfall, humidity, that kind of thing for the environment and climate and that sort of situation. And then the habitat is what the organism relates to specifically. Like fish need a river. All right. Mountain goats need a mountain. So that sort of thing is kind of the difference between environment and habitat. So basically the habitats are in the environments. And we talk about microclimates within those places. And a lot of those are kind of mini environments within the habitat. So there's lots of overlay. And of course, no environment is separate from another environment. No habitat is separate from an environment. All ecosystems are interconnected. If we talk about water and the fish, which I like to talk about, we've got our river, which is one habitat, and then the riparian area, which is the stream side, is another habitat. And then farther up on the bank and out away from the river is whatever that is, whether it's forest or prairie or whatever. So different species have different preferred habitat. Some of the foundations there. And on that, I have a background in fisheries, forestry, wildlife, and I base a lot of my thoughts. And I'm just thinking about, as I'm saying that, everything we do is based on habitat. Everything we do is in a habitat. And when we talk about pattern recognition, one of these quintessential things for, understanding in the human brain, the human thought process, we're observing pattern recognition. Pattern recognition happens in a habitat in an environment, not only in an external environment, but in an internal environment also. So if we talk about introspect, that's our inner environment that we're observing, our thought process. Think about what you're thinking about. That's observing our inner environment, how our thoughts connect to our words, connects to our actions. Those are all our interconnecting environments, our mental, emotional, physical habitats. Throw spiritual in there too, of course. And I use natural science as kind of a foundation to start a lot of the conversations. It's, I think, an easy thing, the easiest way to start off, like building foundation. We're talking about natural science and habitat, natural habitat, ecosystems, environments. Some people I've seen say that, you know, our habitat, I think, is anything around us, and including non-natural items, including specific man-made items. I like to think of our environment as the base, as part of just natural. And then if there's something, if we want to use environment, be specific that there's something non-natural in a natural environment. And we're going to talk about those things too, an introduction of non-natural things in our, not only our physical ecosystem, and our physical environment and habitat, but how do non-natural things affect our mental, emotional, spiritual? Again, because the physical is medicine, is contemporary medicine. And how does relating to things in a, how does relating to things that are not naturally occurring affect our behavior, our thought process, our emotional wellness? Also, I'm going to go back just a second and say that there's a lot here. This is an ongoing conversation. I think all these workshops are ongoing conversations. So if it's a lifetime conversation, how much can we expect to get done in an hour and a half? And I'm playing with the formats a little bit. I think my goal is to put out some information and segments of information and my own observations, and then let whoever's, you know, playing along to take that on their own volition and think about it on their own. And of course, you know, I'm available to call or message or whatever, communicate. And as things go on, I want to be having these workshops in a more multi-day or segmented format. So contemporary science and natural science says we don't understand an organism unless we understand its environment. Okay, so that means if we looked at that objectively, that means we don't understand ourselves unless we understand our environment. And looking at it from, you know, wildlife, from natural sciences, it's not only the environment, it's the environment shapes the organism. So to understand the evolutionary trajectory of the organism in its natural habitat is the foundation for understanding everything as best we know it. Using those English words as the placeholders, I think sometimes they're better placeholders than others, but I think they're good placeholders for this. So to understand the human, you have to understand the human environment. And this is the part where a lot of people start to get off track really quick, because over the, again, using science, 300,000 years of Homo sapien evolution, 3 million years of Homo genus evolution, that's all been natural environment, No trains, planes, automobiles, no fast food, no computers, no books, none of those things, no asphalt, no cement. And of course, that list goes on and on. So to understand how natural ecosystems fit together and natural environments fit together, that helps us, that allows us, that facilitates our understanding ourselves. And oh yeah, to understand how natural environments, natural habitats flow together, we can see how we have habitats, we have these physical, mental, emotional, spiritual habitats, and not just our external, but yes, our internal habitats also. And that is, again, that's the big key, is to understand take a look at our external environments and see what's happening in our internal environments. And I'm speaking from the hip, and then I've got my notes right here that I'm looking at. So best example of ecosystems and interconnected ecosystems with the tree. So here's an example. And again, I'm going to start with some basic foundational things about environment, habitat, and then move on to some more, how that affects us as humans. So the tree life goes like this. In a natural setting, trees lose their leaves accumulate, decompose. That's what provides proper soil structure and nutrients to the tree. So the tree has a lot to do with its own ecosystem, right? The leaves fall, that creates soil, and all the beneficial microorganisms and everything turn that leaf litter into soil, and that's what provides the habitat for the roots. So the roots have a specific habitat called the rhizosphere, by the way. Roots have a specific habitat. The foliage has a specific habitat. All of the microorganisms that interact with the tree have specific habitat. All those things go together to create an ecosystem. So here's the ecosystem. If we say ecosystem of the tree, includes all of the moles and worms and everything below ground and everything above ground. So it's kind of a neat example of balance also. And there's lots of lessons about, what happens within happens on the outside. Everything flows out from within is another example of that interconnection point of the internal habitats with the external habitats in human. And then I'll stop on occasion and, depending on time and everything, and give people a chance to chime in. And then as we get done, usually we have the after party.
The after party.
Wellness after party. So, and then hi, Samsung. I think I know who you are. Thanks for joining. And I'm gonna say, let's see here. What do we have here? What do my notes say? My notes say life isn't rocket science, but they both do require fundamental understanding of environment. And to repeat, we don't understand an organism unless we understand its environment. This means we don't understand ourselves unless we understand our own individual and species environment and habitat. There's all kinds of psychology that talks about environment and habitat and that kind of thing. Oh, well, what's the child's environment? What kind of environment are they raised in? Is it a healthy environment or, an unhealthy environment? Are there, what kind of challenges are in our environment? And I think that the big catch in contemporary society, again, is not recognizing the natural environment. And some things in natural environment that go that I call natural laws and are like the foundations of environment, natural environment, are the connection to everything. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say mitakiase, connection to everything for most people here. That part and interconnecting ecosystems, right? Nothing is separate from anything else. So connection to everything, challenge, the challenge of life and death facilitates life. Challenge creates growth. Challenge shapes the species. The species adapts to challenges in its environment. So, and that's one thing that has been recognized, is that when people are adapting to specific things in their environment, adapting to or relating to, and we'll talk about relating to structure. So in the physical, it's the structure that different organisms relate to, and I'll get to that. But different variables in the habitat, different challenges, and are they what we relate to in our habitat, in our home environment, are they healthy things that we're relating to or not healthy things that we're relating to? Are we getting good lessons on our own volition with support, or are we kind of learning lessons the hard way? Do we have good examples and others helping to model wellness, or do we not have that? Do we have people that are, not on their wellness journey, to say? The other part is ebb and flow. Something that's really missing in contemporary society is understanding the ebb and flow. And in our own, since we're part of the planet, right? We're on the planet, so we belong to it, and there's ebb and flow. So as things breathe, to use that analogy or that reality, even, the lungs expand and then collapse, and expand and collapse. And, we take in and then we give back. In science, they say everything eats, everything excretes. So there's a ebb and flow, and there's also a balance there, which is the next part of natural law, is balance. So as we're growing, as we're receiving, there's also a natural give back too. So to understand, now we get into the psychology, to think about contemporary society and the get mentality. Oh, wait, well, that get, that's not a true cyclical flow, because in a natural system, everything as it gets, it gives. But contemporary society, speaking in generalities, is so commoditized and consumer, and it has consumer mindset so bad, and that take, get, which of course is kind of a big symptom of addiction, is trying to fill our inner development voids with materialistic things typically, but it can also be ideology, addiction to ideologies. Anyway, people with that get mentality take, get, accumulate, greed, these kind of things. Well, there's no output there. Lots of input, no output. So what does that mean? If we take that mentality, and if we apply it to what contemporary science knows about organisms on this planet, we say that mentality is full of shit, right? Because it's taking in so much but it's not giving, and that accumulation. So, and again, pretty simple concept, input, output. If we're taking in, then we should also be giving. And I just heard the other day, a good example from a traditional person, a philosophy. What are you giving to your community? What are we giving to our community? And, they're not talking about just physical things, but what's our contribution? What's our energetic contribution? Kind of interesting on that. One of the best things I heard was from contemporary business. And if you look closely in contemporary business, there's some people that have come kind of full circle, and we say triple bottom line, for example, but they've got a more human-centric understanding that people are part of the business, and the business doesn't function without people. So they say that the best thing, and this was in Success magazine, right? Like cutting edge, what most people would think about is really, capitalistic, but it's that one's pretty good about being well balanced as far as sustainable trade versus capitalism. Success magazine, highly recommended. Very good about nonprofit segment and the give back. But Success magazine, in one article that really sticks with me, they said that the most valuable thing that you can bring to your business is your energy. And so by keeping your own wellness in shape, you're bringing that into your business and, business, community, family, all those kind of things. So natural ecosystem, natural laws in the natural ecosystems, connection to everything, challenge, ebb flow, cycles. And I like to think about cycles as being the more dynamic ebb and flow. So ebb and flow are the dualistic kind of foundation, but then cycles have a multi-faceted ebb and flow, if you will. And then balance. So ebb and flow helps create balance, and all these things work for sustainability. All those things work for the optimization, to use that word, the optimization of the organism and the habitat. And so the organisms will work with the habitat. All the microorganisms in the root ecosystem, in the rhizosphere, in the roots habitat, all work with the roots to make the roots stronger, and then they get from the roots and they give to the roots at the same time. So again, understanding some basics of life, the wolves and deer relationship, for example, or the wolves and elk relationship. The wolves take from the population, but what they're taking is making that population stronger. And that challenge makes the wolves stronger. And of course, that all affects the whole ecosystem. There's kind of an interesting thing going on in Yellowstone since they introduced the wolves. The beaver population is increasing because the elk aren't able to graze down an area so much, a stream side so much, so it allows the smaller brush along the streams to grow, which provides more food for the beaver. And then, of course, the beaver makes dams, which makes some more habitat that's more conducive to moose, waterfowl, this kind of thing. So there's another example of the interconnected ecosystems. And of course, that balance, but everything works for sustainability. That ebb and flow all works for an average. High tides, low tides. When the tide goes out, it exposes lots of things for predators, and including humans. There's a coastal saying that says, when the tide is out, the table is set. And then like little insects and a whole host of other organisms come into low tide, and then they get stuck there. And so then the tide rises and provides more food for that, what they call the intertidal zone. So there's that ebb and flow happening, and things are feeding on the organisms in the at low tide, and then those same things become food for the organisms at high tide. So that's a kind of quintessential example of that, and that balance. So everything studied and observed is done so in environment and habitat. Everything is in a habitat and environment. Right now, this is a habitat that we've created that's conducive to understanding some of these things, for example. But the understanding that habitat, and we went through some of the most core basic things. Challenge. Where's challenge in contemporary society? That's a whole nother thing. But to understand where these things are missing in contemporary society versus how our species evolved is a key component to, did I just repeat myself again? To understanding our species. So we can't understand ourselves unless we understand our environment, and challenge is what creates life. But think about, for example, how much people in contemporary society, I say dis-challenge, don't embrace challenge. Think about challenge as, some kind of work that we have to overcome, like a hardship or inconvenience. That's a huge obstacle for the contemporary human species to overcome, is not having that negative connotation with challenge, because there's so much more behind that. And again, understanding life, if we understand ourselves, how can we understand ourselves if we don't understand our habitat? Again, that's contemporary science says that we don't understand an organism unless we understand its habitat or its environment, and understand the evolutionary trajectory, how the human species evolved in a natural habitat, no machinery, this sort of thing. And then to understand, people are trying to help themselves, but they don't understand environment. I mean, that's pretty powerful just on that one thing. We don't understand an organism unless we understand its environment. And if anyone's taking notes, that's the note to take, because we have to, same thing. Here's a parallel, is probably everyone's heard that, someone can only understand us to the level that they understand themselves. Okay. Right. Everyone's heard that. But what about the environment that we evolved in? Oh, and the natural environment that everything else is in. We're the only species that has introduced non-natural things, made up things into our environment. And again, we'll get to that. But connection to everything. For the sake, and this is all for the sake of optimizing the organism and sustainability, longevity. Connection to everything, challenge, ebb flow, cycles, balance. So where are those things in the natural environment? When we get used to seeing those things in the natural environment, and that's why I gave some examples of the of the tides. Those are easy ones. And the wolves and the trees losing their leaves. If we understand these things, then we can understand how we relate to ourselves, and we can see these ecosystems. What we want to be able to do with our introspect, okay, here's an important part. So what we want to be able to do with our introspect is see where we have challenge happening, where we have balance happening, where we have connection to everything happening, where we have that intention of sustainability happening, the ebb flow in the cycles. Where do we have that in our own, not only our external physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual ecosystems, but our internal physical, mental, emotional, spiritual ecosystems. And if we see they're lacking in our internal, if we see something's lacking, if we're lacking balance in our mental, emotional, spiritual, the easiest way to address that, or one way, I shouldn't say that, recant that statement. One thing that is an easy thing to look at is our external environment. Are we physically in a habitat that's conducive to mental, emotional, spiritual wellness? I'm not going to dwell too much on the inner physical, on the personal physical, just because that's, I think everyone knows that that's science. Balanced diet, all those things. It does matter. Absolutely. Good diet is going to help us, is going to encourage us to do some more exercise. Exercise is going to encourage us to do some more diet. It's going to make our physical being feel better, which makes our mental facet work better, which is our emotional, and all of those together, plus connection to everything. That's what I call the spiritual aspect. Structure. So all these things, what we did, and talking about the different kinds of interactions with the organisms, with the tree and the leaves and the microorganisms in the root system, and the wolves and the elk, and the high tides. That's all structure within our mental ecosystem, right? So when we talk about growing healthy mental habitat, which I talk about, that's a kind of a foundational thing for me. Grow healthy mental habitat. Well, growing healthy mental habitat is that understanding. So now we're trying to understand our external habitat, and there's some examples. Well, now we took those examples of external habitat and we put them in our internal habitat. That is a structure that we relate to, and we relate to it. That structure, the relating to that structure is understanding. We understand how things fit together. If people do not have interconnecting ecosystems in their mental habitat, we have what? Disconnect. Okay. So relating to natural systems is connective, understanding. Non-natural systems in our mental habitat, relating to those is disconnect. Here's the decolonized part. Written law, printed currency, clocks. And if you're not used to hearing that, it might sound silly, but if you're not used to hearing it and you've been listening to this, now you understand a little bit about inorganic things in our habitat that we're relating to. Instead of relating to natural cycles of ebb and flow within ourselves and within nature, and of course the sun and daylight and darkness, relating to a clock. This is the question. how does that affect the organism that's evolved for this species has evolved for 300,000 years, according to science. So, give a little bit of slack, but it's making the point without relating to a clock that just goes at a constant pace. There's no ebb and flow there. How does that put off our mentality? How does relating to printed currency that doesn't have a natural lifespan, that doesn't have value within itself? How does relating to that versus 300,000 years, not to mention the 3 million years before that and forever before that it took to get our species here. So we have, how old they say the planet is. I'll have to look that up. I don't know. But again, that's relating to time. So it really doesn't matter a lot. And the concept of evolutionary trajectory, you can't just take an organism off its evolutionary trajectory and expect it to do okay, especially more dynamic organisms, and taking an organism out of its natural habitat. You can't, polar bears don't do well in cages. Nothing works in captivity, basically. Fish don't do well in fish tanks. All these things, you think about domesticated animals, turkeys, cows, those things are not adapted to a natural environment. So they went from being autonomous to needing help. Lots of parallels to domesticated humans as well there. And then, of course, written law versus natural law. Our species has evolved to, we have to get along with each other, or we die. We don't survive without community. That's the evolutionary trajectory. So again, and these are the easy big ones. Clocks, print currency, written law. All I'm saying is that they're non-natural items that we're relating to as people. So again, there's that decolonized part there. But according to science, it's an accurate hypothesis that it is not conducive to human wellness. And I'm going to try and stay on topic, but I'll let everyone take it from there. If you're here, you probably know all the symptoms of colonialism and such. Now, of course, I cannot see my notes because I don't have the light. So, but what we're talking about is structure, right? We talked about structure in our mental habitat, growing healthy mental habitat, and understanding how the wolves and elk interact, and how the trees interact, and how the ebb and flow happens. That's internal structure now. Understanding inorganic structure that we relate to. We all relate to clocks, printed currency, and written law, governments, those kind of things. Challenge. What's a challenge? What'd you say?
I said challenge.
Okay, so challenge, understanding that challenge is what I say, natural law. Challenge is a natural law. So how do we relate to challenge? How do we relate to it? Yeah, sure. There's the physical part, but what's our relation to that in our mental habitat? If we take that concept of challenge and put it in our head and think about it, we're relating to that concept. And so this is structure. In an external habitat, organisms relate to structure. So insects relate to trees, mountain goats relate to rocks. Fish in a stream also relate to rocks. They relate to shoreline. So all these things, so there's different structure. and from different organisms use different structure. Birds use trees. Some birds use the lower parts of trees. Some birds use the upper parts of trees. Some birds use trees by rivers. Trees and rivers are the structure. Some birds use trees and prairie. Trees and prairie are the structure that they relate to. So this is a physical thing. So the parallel is our internal mental habitat and these structures that are that we're relating to. So that's the next part of environment habitat is understanding structure and understand how we relate to ideas and ideologies also. So, for example, thinking that we can bypass natural structure and ebb and flow and challenge and sustainability and ignore connection to everything and bypass our natural ebb, flow, and cycles and expect to be healthy is an ideology. It is not reality. But as you can plainly see, that's what we've got. So challenge, embrace challenge, right? That's a natural thing. Challenge is still flowing through us with all that. Oh, another part of Natural Science 101 is that you can't have a healthy organism in an unhealthy environment. So, of course, the physical, where, in an unhealthy environment, pollution for the humans, taking in carbon monoxide from too many vehicles and such. And then, of course, fish, if there's pesticides in the water, if there's pesticides in the soil, then the food we grow in the soil, we're taking that in. So unhealthy environment in the physical. And then also, again, there's the unhealthy environment in the mental, emotional, spiritual. Going back to the kind of common analogies and observations with children, do we have a healthy home environment? Is there wellness? Is there intentionality with healthy growth? Or is it what they say, toxic? Or is there good things being modeled, or are there bad things being modeled? Usually, if people aren't intentional about what they're doing, then it ends up being negative influence, negative models, negative examples. So yeah, concepts are structure. The concept of being intentional for our wellness, that's a structure that we're relating to in our mental habitat. Here's another one that, like, you see so pattern recognition. Do we see the patterns between things happening in the external physical environment and internal mental habitat? So pattern recognition to say, oh, look, there's ebb flow in nature, here, and here. And then, we've got a natural high energy output and then an ebb. And sometimes there's more high output, and then we need an ebb to balance that. Oh, there's another one of those natural laws of balance. So we can see that. And then challenge, where does challenge come up? Is this conversation challenging? Is it the right level challenging? Hopefully it's not too challenging, but just challenging enough. It needs to be. We need to have more challenging conversations. All right. So what's my give back? My give back to the community is to facilitate more challenging conversations. Okay, good. Interesting thing with our evolutionary development, hunt and gather, hunters gatherers. We've been hunter gatherers or 99.99999+ % of our existence, whatever. Think about our information. We're hunting and gathering information. We're hunting and gathering context. We're adding to our mental habitat as we are going through life. We're observing, and what we observe is all going into our data bank, our data collection. And if we're intentional, we're looking for clues. We're looking for things that come up as we go through life on our individuals that are valuable. So valuable information, one of the core key things with the human's most important tool, our ability to objectively thought process. We want valuable information. When's the tide going out? When are the elk moving around? When does the sun going down? How much time left do we have before winter really sets in? That's all valuable information. So we want to look for valuable information. So we're hunting and gathering valuable information, and we are relating to those things as structure in our mental habitat. So again, growing healthy mental habitat. So that's what we're doing right now. We're growing healthy mental habitat in line with, these English terms that reflect these concepts of life as we know it. Um, inorganic things that we relate to. We went through government money clocks. I think that's just an easy baseline thing to say. But we could say inorganic things. We could say, we've got a lot to say here. I want to try to keep moving too. Habitat, understanding habitat and what we call predators, pathogens, that sort of thing. And they've all got a place in a naturally balanced ecosystem, in a easy for me to say, in a sustainable ecosystem, there is a certain amount of pathogens. And that those create challenge, right? So if there's a certain amount of, I'm going to try and keep it simple, of disease, and of, colds and flus in a human population, we grow defenses that way. I wonder if that translates to basic bullshit. Do we have defenses up for bullshit? To kind of keep boundaries for bullshit? Is that like, have we, adapted to a society full of shit, from not giving back and not going through, not understanding the everything eats, everything excretes, um so so using these terms, okay, again, to understand that everything's got a place in the natural ecosystem and there isn't a good or bad, but just using these English words, because that's what we got to work with. Pathogens in weak habitat, if the organism is weakened by whatever kind of factors, it makes that habitat more conducive to the pathogen. And so the pathogen in a compromised habitat, in an organism's weakened state, it makes it more conducive to pathogens, and also predators. Before animals are strong, before the elk are strong, and they're young, when they're babies, they're easier prey for the wolves, and of course, again, when they get old, easier prey for the wolves. So to grow a healthy mental habitat based on reality, based on ecosystems, based on natural things, based on this understanding of how predator, prey, pathogens, ebb, flow, challenge, connection to everything, sustainability, we are growing resistance to bullshit, to pathogens coming in, to ideology. So to understand how these ecosystems work, I think that's a good kind of meditation to understand. If we keep ourselves healthy, we are going to be naturally resistant to all kinds of things. And to build context, if we build context, all right, now we're back to structure again. Context is another term for mental structure. Everything happens within context is another term for that. So structure, habitat, context. This conversation is happening within a context of the whole conversation. We are relating to the words being spoken within the context that we already have. With all these ideas that we've picked up, we have an existing mental habitat. Some of those things aren't even ours. We picked them up along the way. We pick them up as we're going to work, as we're going about our daily thing. That's part of our mental habitat too. Now we're intentional about what we're taking in, and we're trying to add some wellness into that habitat to offset negativity, to offset delusion. So the context that we had previously to this conversation, we're adding this conversation, we're comparing what's being said now to what thoughts or ideas or ideologies that we've already had. So context is the environment. So we're introducing new things into our environment, right? Growing healthy environment. What we want to be doing is we want to be introducing healthy things into our environment. And as we know, as we relate to healthy things, as we relate to things that make sense, then, oh, we have some more context. And this makes sense. Well, this stuff about, the wolves and the elk and related to the beaver population rising in the and the ebb and the flow and of the tides and all this kind of stuff. Okay, that makes sense. We all know that. Okay, how is that relating to this concept of our inner ecosystems, of our mental, emotional, spiritual ecosystems? And oh, here's some more context. Well, we do know that we have a physical ecosystem. Again, that's just medicine. So these are all structures that relate to. So context is a structure also. Many, 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 many layers, many different kinds of context, many different kinds of mental structure. Oh, let's put something else out here. Diversity. Okay, diversity. That's got a good tone to it. I think most people here are, diversity and equity. Diversity is good. But what does that mean in contemporary society? Well, hopefully we're adding to some diversity to our mental habitat now with some new ways to look at things, some new concepts, some more understandings about ebb and flow, and some more real life examples of interconnecting ecosystems and such. If we think about the evolution of our species and think about the diversity that we related to on a regular basis, is way, way, way beyond what we've got now, right? So when we were hunter-gatherers, and again, everyone was hunter-gatherers for 99.99999 plus percent of our existence, to use contemporary science, 300,000 years Homo sapien, 3 million years Homo genus, plus how long has the most colonized demographic of the human species or human subspecies been off of a hunter-gatherer existence. Really, really not that long. You might be able to stretch it back a couple thousand years, maybe. But I think we understand the point. So we had all these different things, all this diversity in our natural habitat. Well, that was diversity in our mental habitat. If our mental habitat, if our brain is our most important tool, which is how we got to be humans, it's the only reason we're here. We don't have fangs, claws, super strength, any of that kind of stuff. We had to understand our environment and adapt to it. So we had all the different types of foods, and different foods were available at different times, some more than others. All these different types of food throughout the year, and different animals and different plants. And when did this animal show up? And when did this plant show up? And how do you process this animal? And how do you process this plant? All those different things. And what season is this plant and animal in? And what time of day is this plant and animal in? And, oh, I think I'm going to go and try and get this animal, but that animal is not here. So maybe I need to get another animal, or maybe I need to end up with plants and be a vegetarian that night or that week or month or several months or whatever, in the individual, whatever's going on with the individual in that human subspecies habitat. So we had all these infinite diversity of not only physical challenges and what's the word I'm trying to look for? All the diversity in the physical challenges and in the environment, but also, our mental habitat, all these different options that we had to weigh out. And, oh, geez, do we go here and, try to catch fish, or do we go here and try to get, elk or deer? And of course, we, probably end up splitting up and different people doing different things. Oh, there's diversity again, to understand that there's no for sure's, and and that's an ebb and flow. Sometimes we know there's salmon here. We've been here, for the past week, they're here, but not all the time. So all that diversity versus now we go to the store. Well, they might be out of our favorite food at the store, but I could probably go to another store. I eat bananas every day. I might go out of the store to the store once in a while, and they might be out of bananas, but I could go somewhere else, or I could be without bananas, but I could get an apple right next to the bananas. I don't have to travel far. If what I want is not there, I can find a substitute. Do you see the diversity that our species developed with that is not here now? So, if we talk about the brain being our tool and the things used to sharpen our tool, which are variables and diversity, and now we don't have that. What percentage of naturally occurring diversity is the contemporary human lacking now? Here we go again. It's probably 99.9999999+ percent. So, the human species isn't isn't as sideways as it is because people are thinking too much. I guarantee you that. So to understand some of these things, here's natural science again. If you want to understand the organism, you have to understand the environment. So if there's and then the next part, another part of that is If you want to help an organism, you have to understand the pathogen.
What poisons it?
What's that?
What poisons it?
Yeah, and I mean to take that in a holistic, yeah, what's adversely affecting it? Like if the real life example, the trout have whirling disease. Well, what is this? What is this organism? What is this thing? Well, it affects the trout's equilibrium. Well, what habitat is conducive to that pathogen's life? Right. So you have to, so here's the organism that you're focused on, the trout, but then you have to understand you understand the trout's evolution, and the trout evolved in, this kind of setting, this water temperature, blah, blah, I could go on forever on this. Um, but now it's got a pathogen. What happened? First thing we look at is what change in the environment. So that now there's this pathogen. What happened in the environment? Well, first of all, what is this pathogen? Can we identify this pathogen? Where did it come from? What's the pathogen's life cycle? What's the environment that's conducive to the pathogen's life? Okay, so if we talk about growing healthy mental habitat, and we talk about understanding, and we talk about misunderstanding. Talk about misunderstanding is the pathogen or the challenge, right? Understanding is the wellness and the growth modality. So to embrace challenge of our healthy mental habitat, if we grow our understanding, that makes our mental habitat less hospitable to misunderstanding. By understanding some things about our natural world and our development, and we're adding context in the development of our human species, that's understanding. That helps us give the perspective and the context when we talk about things like linear mindset, contemporary society, aka colonialism. Disconnect from that natural habitat, disconnect from all that diversity that's been sharpening our cognitive function, disconnect from these understanding of these natural laws. Oh, wait a minute, we're disconnected. If a society just goes to the store, how does that disconnect us from understanding natural laws and ebb and flow and stuff like that? Oh, and how does that understand now if we can't relate to our natural habitat on the outside? How does that affect us not relating to our natural habitat on the inside? Oh, okay. So understanding natural habitat on the outside on the regular allows us to see where our thought process is going on the inside on the regular. So there's habitat conducive to growth of an organism and habitat conducive to pathogens. So understanding, misunderstanding, cognitive function, the human tool, the most fundamental human tool. I am going to read a couple things here. Evolutionary trajectory and disconnect from things foreign to our natural habitat. How does relating to unnatural concepts in our habitat affect us? Government money clocks are not part of an organic ecosystem habitat and not something that has been in our environment for the vast majority of our species evolution. We could say these things are invasive species. They take up resource in our mental habitat and they do not give back because, of course, they're inanimate objects. There's no energetic exchange. Our energetic exchange flows out, but there's no return on our energetic investment. So that's relating to inanimate objects, relating to a structure. If we relate to, in our mind, if we relate to a tree, a process that we have to go through get to get trout for dinner, to kill them out, to harvest camas. That's a process. There's a energetic exchange there because those are naturally occurring things. When we relate to print currency, clocks, written word, there's no energetic exchange. So understanding flow, energy, some, really basic fundamental things here. And understanding our energy is another one. And that's kind of another natural thing. What's our energy output? What's, to use a contemporary term, what's the return on our investment? We've only got so much time, right? We're investing our time, discussing these things. And, hopefully that's a good return on our investment for understanding, and sustainability and long-term. I'll add a couple in there. But to keep track of where our energy is going is another kind of fundamental thing with our environment. Are we relating to structure? Is the structure solid that we're relating to? If we talk about foundational understanding of life on this planet, environment, habitat, ecosystems, that's probably the most fundamental understanding of structure that we have. I think that was even in the intro to this. This is fundamental understanding environments and the habitat. Sun, moon, season, times of day, and infinite cycles of life and death of whatever variety of organisms all contribute to habitat. Basically, the process is doing the inner work of consciously understanding the challenge, building a platform to grow through the challenge, then use that platform to start aligning ourselves with and growing healthier inner and external environments and habitats. So everything's connected. We grow our understanding and we add to these foundations. Now we can compare. If we know natural challenge, connection to everything, sustainability, ebb, flow, balance, we can check ourselves. And now we're adding our understanding of these things, and we can think back about, oh yeah, the wolves and the elk, the wolves and elk affects the beaver, trout, moose, waterfowl populations, and the ebb and flow. Things come down to at low tide to feed on the intertidal organisms, and then tide takes them, and the intertidal organisms feed on the things it came down to eat them, and all those cycles. Conscious cognitive intention and work give this energetic and physical part is the food, water we give into our new boundary. So if we say, growing healthy boundaries, growing healthy habitat is part of those boundaries, and aligning ourselves with our own boundaries. And that's a lot of understanding. If we say my own boundaries are, I don't want to be stupid. Let's just generally work on some basic understanding. Developing infrastructure is not developing inner structure. That's a projection. In other words, that's a reflection of lack of introspection. I put the shown in there. Lack of introspect, right? Doing our inner work, growing healthy mental habitat is developing inner structure. That is different than roads, stoplights, sidewalks, that kind of thing. Different deal. Oh, it seems like there sure is an awful lot of infrastructure and not a lot of inner structure. Oh, you think there's a correlation? I say yes. I say yes. I say that that is a projection of what's going on. So balance, what happens within happens around us, understanding our inner ecosystems and our external ecosystems. And if we say that our physical actions are just a manifestation of our inner, our external physical actions are a manifestation of our inner mental, emotional, and spiritual environments. So the physical, someone does something. Okay, great. Addressing that is not the issue. It's what made them do something. So then we're into the psychology. Then we're into their emotional intelligence. We're into the ancestral wisdom, objective thought process, emotional intelligence, ancestral wisdom. What is the habitat that allowed this organism to be taken over by pathogens and display toxic traits and become pathogenic? You know, there's lots of examples of buzzard. You know, the buzzard cleans up the dead. If one person's cognitive function dies, okay, whatever. But if a whole community of people's cognitive function dies, then that starts spreading. That's because we're all connected, and that's the environment. If we're in a societal environment that's not conducive to wellness, that's not intentional about growth and understanding, we're in that. So, you can't have a what is it? The challenge is being the challenge is obtaining wellness, growing wellness in a environment that's not conducive to it. So big challenge of life or death. I say, well, there's not a lot of grizzly bears around. Most people don't have real challenge of life or death, but in the evolutionary trajectory of the humans, we did. And so that's not there. So now look, challenge of life or death goes back to the reason that we got as far as we have is understanding our thought process, and back to square one. Habitat, mental habitat. Let's see here. How much more do I have? Got about another month or so. To squeeze into
Another month?
Yeah. Got about another month. I stopped writing. I stopped writing down notes because it's like, but yeah, these are going to be long workshops. So I'm just going to throw some more things out here and try to, stay within that half hour overtime.
Did you say a month?
Yeah, a month.
I'm gonna go get a snack then.
Yeah, bring your sleeping bags, get your tent. It's a month-long workshop here. No, really though, I mean, these should be, these are going to be, all day or, multi-day workshops. Speaking which, carrying capacity is another part of natural environment, core fundamental. Might as well go through carrying capacity. Carrying capacity is an interesting thing to understand. I'll start with a real life example. If all the shit I've been saying is starting to go like, well, I've had enough, that's your carrying capacity.
Is
In a
that what
nut,
that is?
yeah, that's your natural, that's your inner ecosystem's carrying capacity. That's the carrying capacity of your mental habitat.
Okay.
Yeah. So as we grow our mental habitat and we're used to more things, our carrying capacity increases. That's kind of a cool thing about, about the human aspect. In a natural setting, what it is a 50-yard stream. Just imagine infinite variables, right? But just to make the basics, 50-yard stretch of stream has 100 trout, and five of them are big. Um, 50 of them are medium size, and 45 of them are small. And there's how many other microorganisms that they feed in. Let's say there's 6 species of macroinvertebrate insects. And there's what else? There's let's see, for that, I'm actually trying to do like a real ratio here. And there's 60 crawdads. And you know, 10 crawdads are big, 40 crawdads are 10 crawdads are big, 20. Yeah, anyways, bigger organisms, there's less of. Smaller organisms, there's more of. The smaller organisms generally get eaten and don't last past their first little section of life cycle. Oh, and then there's predators. There's, you know, 1/8 of an otter, 1/16 of a kingfisher, and 1/100th of a bear. A bear will every once in a while walk down and grab a crawdad or perhaps a trout or whatever. So, but that ecosystem, that section of stream has a carrying capacity, and those numbers, of course, fluctuate, but all within its carrying capacity. So if something happens and there's not enough trout, then the insect population increases and overtakes and starts eating too many crawdad eggs, that sort of thing. So that's like the basic. Again, that's like a week's worth of science class in itself. But carrying capacity, and the carrying capacity works through the connection to everything in cycles, ebb, flow, challenge, to for the maximum, to optimize the wellness of everything in the environment, including the environment itself. So carrying capacity is an important thing. Physical actions in the external environment are a reflection of the mental, emotional, spiritual inner environments. Lack of nurturing our mental, emotional, spiritual needs are reflected in lack of care for external environment, right? Why do people not understand that we're on a planet and that if we take care of the planet, we'll have the things we need? Well, it's always going to be a human problem, and human mentality. Oh, by the way, narcissism EDU. Why can you not talk to a narcissist? Because they don't talk to themselves. Lack of, inner engagement, lack of external engagement. There's those connections. Disconnect from self is disconnect from others. Human problems are not abstract. Everything on this planet has patterns, and human faults and frailties can be understood and have been understood by understanding the basics of our natural environment and looking for those patterns, cycles, and challenges. Invasive species, habitat conducive to the overpopulation of pathogens. If we say scarcity mindset is a naturally occurring pathogen or challenge in the human consciousness and the human thought process. Same with ego. You know, those things are there for a reason. We have insecurities so we can address them. If they're not addressed, then the lesson doesn't go away. The challenge is still there, but it increases. And if we don't focus on ourselves and on our own, you know, inner habitat, then scarcity mindset, if that doesn't get addressed, it doesn't go away. So it gets insecure, and then insecure starts to act out. Those lessons start to the symptoms start to show externally. And so I say scarcity mindset left unattended leads to narcissism, which leads to colonialism, capitalism, all those kind of things. So that scarcity mindset, there's another inner environment that if not addressed, leads into toxicity. And there's a really good, I'd really like to talk about the pine beetle there. I think I will. So the natural example, right? We just want natural. So we want scarcity mindset to narcissism because it's not, because there are our inner questions aren't addressed. Oh, wait, challenge thought process, address our inner questions. Everyone's got a whole bunch of questions about, oh, what's wrong with people? What's going on? What's going on with society? Well, check the mirror first of all, because societal is always a reflection of the inner consciousness, of the average of the inner. That's all societal is. Societal is a reflection of the individual. The pine beetle, okay, goes like this. I'm going to try and condense it as best I can. Adult female burrows through the bark, lays the eggs in the cambium. The cambium is the vascular tissue where all the good stuff is, starches, sugars, that kind of thing. Vascular tissue with starches and sugars. Eggs hatched, larvae eat that vascular system. The natural control, the defense that the pine tree has for the bark beetle is moisture. So simply, if the tree is healthy, if the pine tree is healthy, it's got enough sap to impede the progress of the pine beetle. So the pine beetle burrows in and all the sap comes rushing out. Oh, okay, maybe find another tree because this isn't going to work. So the pine beetle finds a tree that is not as healthy for whatever reason. Again, trying to keep this conversation halfway short, isn't as healthy, doesn't have as much vascular flow, is able to get in and burrow and make enough progress to lay the eggs, and the eggs aren't just flooded out by the sap, but they still have enough sap to eat. Oh, balance, delicate balance, right? Well, if the habitat changes, if the seasons get drier for whatever reason, the pine trees get weaker and have less sap, less moisture. So then that makes the habitat more conducive to the bark beetle. And so then the bark beetle's number increases. And instead of having maybe the bark beetles predominantly in the sick trees, the numbers are so increase exponentially, so that, bear with me, in a sick tree, a bark beetle might make a quarter-size disruption in the vascular system. And in a healthy tree, a bark beetle might only be able to make a eraser size disruption in the vascular system. In an otherwise healthy tree, but the tree doesn't have as much sap, the bark beetle might be able to make a nickel size disruption in the vascular system. If there's 10 or 20 bark beetles in a tree making nickel-sized disruptions in the vascular system, that can still be overcome by the tree. If there's 500 or 5,000 bark beetles making nickel-sized disruptions in the vascular system, that effectively disrupts the tree's vascular system completely and it dies. So that's kind of a life cycle, an ecosystem, cycles, ebb and flow. But if we think of ourselves as our understanding being the sap and misunderstanding being the bark beetle, if we have more understanding, it limits the pathogens that can come into our mental ecosystem. And I'm saying our intermental environment, but our understanding also directly has emotional wellness. So the more we understand, there's an emotional wellness that comes there too. So our mental and our emotional are just really interconnected. So understanding by addressing, understanding how we function that way is, again, adding more structure, adding more context. Oh, we want to be, a healthy, a healthy pine tree in our water. What's our water is, what we're taking in. And of course, there's lots of lessons in flow there. And water, mini wachoni, water's life, right?
Mm-hmm.
We did the little bit of the, let's see here. And there's that part right there.
Mm-hmm.
This is important. So I'm saying the toxic thought process, narcissism, colonialism is the pine beetle in the human species ecosystem. It disrupts flow. And think about it. Everyone that's had a relationship with narcissists, everything takes our lifeblood, takes our wellness. Oh, colonialism takes our blood, takes our flow, takes our life. Disconnect from all that diversity in a natural ecosystem is killing us. Us not engaging with challenge that challenges life, taking away the challenge. Oh, then you took away life, right? See how all those things come together there? Disconnect from challenge, dissing challenge, colonial society would have the human species die of stupidity and atrophy on the couch simply from not embracing challenge. The challenge of life or death facilitates life. When we embrace challenge, we feel good, even if it's the most horrific challenge we can think about, which is exactly what we've got right now. By the way, the human species destroying its planet is absolutely the most horrific thing. Welcome. Hope everyone sleeps well at night. But seriously, to not address the elephant in the room doesn't help. And I'm not saying this shit just for the hell of it. There's applied. Again, colonial society, lots of information, none of it applied. Lots of information, no wisdom. Oh, disconnect in the cycle. You got information, apply the shit. We know interconnecting ecosystems, right? We know this. Probably everyone here, knows me enough to see this already, but no delusion. This is a delusion-free zone.
There's no delusion on the prairie.
No delusion on the prairie. That's right. That's right. That's right. I think we have one person with us from the prairie. No delusion on the prairie in a natural setting, right? People had no delusion. Delusion wasn't an option for our, existence, reality, avoiding reality, making a false reality. Oh, what was I saying? Is that, contemporary society has a system, has a pseudo system of government, money, clocks, ideologies, not connected to the natural planet that we live in. I mean, so what's happening? Oh yeah, people relating to that are, spiraling downhill and are losing life on all the levels. Okay, maybe I have this written down. Maybe we should be more discerning about what's in our delicate mental ecosystem. Now we have a kind of a 30,000-foot view of, that our external ecosystem can be disrupted. Oh, maybe our mental ecosystem can be disrupted. Maybe that's what happened first. Probably that's what happened first. It's all human-centric. Humans didn't understand our natural inner ecosystem and stopped paying attention to the fine points. And yeah, lack of contact with inner habitat, lack of contact with external habitat, and lost. So now we're back here going start from scratch. Habitat and ecosystems 101. Using some contemporary understanding. Relating to inorganic items in our habitat. Bear with me. ADD and ADHD. Attention deficit disorders. Another long talk on its own. But the problem with contemporary society, because contemporary psychology is isn't connecting the organism to the environment with the value that interaction has. So if we say well adjusted to society, but it's a sick society, is well adjusted to a sick society well adjusted? No. Okay. Tell me what in contemporary society is sustainable. Name one thing. I won't wait because I ain't gonna take that long. I already know.
Nothing. Nada.
Right. Nada. Doganishni. You're right. But yet, our core essence, this is what I'm saying. Our core essence wants life. Our core essence wants to live. Everything wants to live on just a core primordial level. Something tells us, and that, I think if everyone is honest with themselves, knows that shit's not right. So the organism, let's look at our species as an organism. The organism does not want to relate to printed currency, written law, and clocks. It's not natural. So then they're not going along with the flow in contemporary society. It's like everyone else is doing. Yeah, everyone else is messed up. So how does an organism relate to things that are not natural in its habitat? Not well. Not wellness. So ADD, ADHD, and to back up what I just said, in case you don't believe me or trust me, which is understandable. Gabor Mate, probably the best physicist known. Gabor Mate, look it up, message me, whatever. GABORMATE with a little dash after it. Compares to traditional societies / hunter-gatherer societies. Didn't have addiction, didn't have all these illnesses because of their habitat, because their environment, because of their social structure, because of their interconnected social structure. I'll add because of their interconnected environment. So, environment. But yeah, maybe we should be more discerning about what's in our delicate mental ecosystem and understand environment, habitat, ecosystems, core basics affect us. We are an ecosystem. We are in an ecosystem. We are in an environment. And natural thought process depends on connection to and understanding of an organic, natural environment. And I didn't get through all the notes, but I think I got through a lot of them, and I think I got the most out of that. So with that, I'll do my formal Kraig Smyth, my biz guide, Business of Being Human, the book that's being written. Hit me up. You know me. Everyone here probably knows me. Yeah, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Appreciate going through this. Like I said, this is a lifelong workshop, really, and it's for sure a full day or a 3-day workshop. And it's always layers and layers and layers. You know, these ecosystems, we're always adding to our understanding and adding to our understanding. And, you know, some of these things, you know, if we meditate on them, we grow our understanding, and that's growing boundaries for toxicity and allows us to function better in this challenging habitat. Embrace challenge. And that concludes this evening's workshop, Environments and Habitats.